I have listened, I have reread, and I woke up early thinking about all of the things that are going on in this book. And at first I thought, okay, I need to have some more answers to all the questions in my head before I make this video. But friends, I woke up to the fact that there will never be an I have all the answers moment until maybe the series is finished in how many years in the future. So here I am, literally at 5 a.m. with my little broccoli pacing around with me, trying to figure out what the heck is going on in this book, and everything that is in my head, I'm dumping out for you today. And I am ready to talk about the biggest questions out there, the theories, the laughs that I shared with my husband because he read it alongside me. Best Husband Award. He is called my favorite husband in my phone. I kid you not, go ask my friends. And what I thought overall about this book. So if you haven't read it yet, save this video and come back to it because I don't want to spoil it for you, but you're gonna want to come back because we have lots of questions and theories that I have answered for you. I'm starting off with the biggest claim I'm going to make, and I know it's said it before, but there is no cure, friends, and there is no way around that. People keep talking about Sloan being the cure or Andarna, but there is going to be no cure. I am convinced that there is just no cure, and what they're going to have to do is they're going to be good venin, bad venin, good normal people, bad normal people, and they're going to have to live in peace. I mean, how many times in this book did the Irids say that it was meant to be a peaceful place and they left because things went to crap, right? And people are using magic for violence, not for peace and not for good. So we know that there is a thread. There is Xaden, there is Violet. They are going to cure it. And I absolutely think there's going to be tons more that we are going to discuss here, but I absolutely think they will be the ones that help all the species, all living creatures evolve. Because let me find on page 348. If you are following along with me, I'm going to call out numbers as well. So on page 348, this is where she asks for the cure. Do you not care that people will die? Perhaps they should. Perhaps the corrupted ones should devour the land in its entirety. Only when they're faced with starvation will they confront the evil they've become. Either they'll die off and the land will regenerate, or they'll confront the abominations they've become and change. How do they do that? Their offspring could evolve, perhaps. So it's not an answer, but they are basically saying they are going to be forced to change if they can't survive the way they have, and the Irids have it their way. They would just leave them to that demise, right? And to figure out, and it's kind of like survival of the fittest, right? Whoever can survive will. That's not the answer we are looking for, but I absolutely think that we are not going to ever lose Xaden because there is a tie, and I'm going to look at this for you right here. This tells me, I know Rebecca has said there's no pregnancy, there's no any of that at this moment, but I absolutely think they are the ones that are going to be the venin and the human, the normal human that unite, and then their offspring. I absolutely think that is a foreshadowing for the future of how humans evolve, how there will be good and bad in both realms, and you need to unite all the people, regardless of background, regardless of whatever region they live in, country, territory they live in. They're all going to have to live in peace and use magic for good, and dragons are going to have to not be weapons, all the stuff. There is no cure for sorting all that stuff, but it's also like a very political world peace kind of thing, right? Where Irids kind of stand for world peace. And there's no way of getting around talking about gods as we're talking about this book in this series, because especially in Onyx Storm, right, it is everywhere. And I want to talk specifically about page 410, which is the intro excerpt at the top, where it talks about Loyal and Doom. You all know what I'm going with? Okay, so it says, While most deities allow temple attendants to choose their timeline of service, only two require a lifetime of dedication, Dune and Loyal. For both war and love, change souls irrevocably. And we know that there is already a hint of Dune, thread of Dune throughout the life of Violet. And we saw that she was partially dedicated. And so I absolutely think she has that strand of it, whether there's some sort of overlap or not, right? That is still to be seen. But I absolutely will stand behind the fact that there is something with Loyal, and it's not just mentioned for nothing, right? Loyal and Xaden, because every single thing that he does, yes, he can be a weapon, but he does everything for love. And even when he turns, these are all things that he is doing for people he loves, right? Whether it is for Tyrandor and the legacy of the rebellion, the revolution that his father started, or if it was for Violet when he actually turned venin, or in the final moment, right, of Sigale. These are people he cherishes, and the marked ones. He gave his own body for the marked ones, right? So these are all things that point to love, 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 love. This person is just a person that is devoted to caring for others, loving others, and serving others in that way. And I don't know if Xaden's mom did some sort of dedication thing or what. With Loyal, we know she's from a different isle, so we don't know how that happened, but I can see something developing where they have these ties to gods. And I said this before too, right? So I'm going to claim that I have won my bet with myself of this tie to gods, and especially Violet. I mean, I knew it for both of them too. They are tied at the soul. They are tied, meant to be together in a whole different way. And obviously, Xaden's soul is not going to completely be ripped away because he always has that thread of love for Violet, and it's mentioned so many times. He holds on to that love, holds on to that warmth, holds on to Violet. And so there's going to be that strand that never breaks him as a venin. So he is going to be okay, friends. It's just going to be a long, hard saga along the way. It's also interesting in light of what Theophany said, where they do not feel love, which is interesting because we know that, at least I know, I am convinced. Let me know if I'm convincing you with all these things. Let me know in the comments everything, because obviously I do not have real life friends. I told you my husband read it with me, and I have a sidebar for you when we get to the who is my brother thing. So I'll hold that, but I need real life friends that will do this with me, annotate and theorize and just stew over it so we can bounce ideas off of each other. So put it in the comments, okay? I want to hear from you. But there is this piece where Theophany said they do not feel love, right? But we know that Xaden is going to, just to rehash. And she still stirred. When Violet talked about temple, do you not yearn for temple? She still stirred. So there is still something. She has suppressed a lot of it, and she's so much older, right? And in her venin ways. But there was still a stir. And so I do not believe that love completely goes away. There is still always a piece of them that is worth retrieving. And then we also need to talk about how Andarna waited for someone with the mind of a scribe. And when we say scribe, there is an interesting part at the top of chapter 58. This is page 472, and this is Violet's dad, right? Most cadets believe their ability to recite historical fact will usher them onto the adept path, but it is actually the ability to observe and recount it that separates the librarians from the scribes. And so when we say Andarna was waiting for someone with the mind of a scribe, it is someone that has the ability to observe and recount it, not just recite history. And so she is waiting for someone that can understand what is going on, figure out the truth, even if it is not splayed out on the page, by observing, by seeing, by reading between the lines. And obviously, that is Violet, but she was also looking for someone that has the heart of compassion to see the truth in different things, as well as be strong enough to do what needs to be done. And so we clearly know that she has waited and waited and waited for someone special to come along. And obviously that is Violet. And at the end of the day, mark my words, love is going to win. That is going to be the thread through it all. Love wins. It's going to bring people of all nations, backgrounds, and even dragons and all creatures together back to where peace is restored. The Arids keep saying, and this is on page 349, you are magic, yet all you seek to use it for is violence. And they said that the original venin didn't seem to be extinguished, so it makes you wonder who is that person looking for Violet and who Theophany was going to take Violet to. Is it one of the first 6? So much still to be answered. I need to make multiple parts of this, so if there are specific questions that you want to dive into together, put those in the comments too, and I will make as many parts as I need to as follow-ups of this. But you can't make it super, super long, right? So let's dive into the most asked questions out there and my possible answers as I was stewing through all this. The first one, I kind of alluded to it. Who is the brother at the end when Xaden is talking about, I have a new brother. He was the last person I thought would turn. And I am also 99.9% confident on this answer. And here is my tangent that I mentioned earlier on why I needed in real life friend. Because I ran downstairs to my husband and I said, husband, I think I know who the brother is, because we were both confused. Like, oh my gosh, what happened at the end? We were listening to it and we were just very confused. And I said, it's Garrick. And he said, no way, no possible way. And I was like, why? I stated my reasons, which I'll share in a second. And he said, oh, I thought you were talking about the prince guy, Arik. Like, no, they're totally different characters, right? Garrick and Arik are very, very different. They do sound similar, and he also was very confused, especially at the beginning when there are lots of names, lots of countries, lots of like different things coming from left field, and he didn't reread and annotate right before I did of the first 2 books. So I can rightly see why he, as well as many other people, did not necessarily like this book, at least in the beginning, because it can be confusing. There are a lot of names, there are a lot of dragons, there are a lot of things to keep track of that get really hard. And so some people have made really great study guides, like the Fantasy Fangirls podcast has a great study guide of all the things, even the gods. I need to go put that next to all my stuff, and I just took a glance, but I need to put that next to all my stuff as a reminder, especially as book 4 and 5 come out, right? Because it's going to be hard to reread everything. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but that is why I need a friend that gets obsessed like I do. But I'm so glad he read it with me. It was really fun to share that. After that, though, he did say he needed to go back into his nonfiction and put fiction aside for a while. If you are curious, he is not a picture person, video person. You will never see his face on here. But if I add enough subscribers or enough comments on requests of his live reactions to things, maybe I can convince him. I don't know. So it's up to you, friends. It is up to you. Okay, so I said I am 99.9% positive that it is Garrick, but let's cross off the other people first. This is some of the other ones that are thrown out there. The 2 that I was stuck on was Garrick and Bodhi, right? And I think that is the obvious ones that people are like, okay, it kind of has to be between them. But here is why I don't think it's Bodhi, Arik, or Brennan. Arik, I mean, you could argue he might have known for the 5 months. We don't know when he developed his precog skills, right? So maybe he knew, but it's just too far off. Navarre needs him. He has different responsibilities, right? So I absolutely do not think it is him. Plus, he wasn't at Xaden's side the whole time, the journey. He's loyal to Violet. It just, the motives aren't really there either. And then you have Brennan. People say Brennan, but he's there at the end, and Nolan was wiped out from trying to mend Jack Barlow. And so if he were trying to mend himself, I just don't buy it. Just don't buy it. And then I don't think it's Bodhi. Are there motives? Yes, because he just always feels like he's in the shadows. He feels left out. He feels like he could do more if he had more powers, maybe, or feel more important. Plus, he really doesn't want to inherit the throne, right? And so maybe he's like, oh, I'd rather turn than inherit the throne because he sees the sign as well. But I really don't think it's him. You see him fighting. He is mentioned as fighting. And then Garrick has so many more convincing things. So let's look at Garrick. He is not there at the end. And he is specifically called out as Lieutenant Tavis not being there when things are asked, right? I think Imogen asks at the end. And he walks away from Imogen saying he's going to find a way to make a difference. And eggs are missing too. That was kind of a weird thing too. I was like, oh, who can take the eggs? But if you're a walker, you can pretty easily go. And if you have super skills because you just channeled, then you have some mega skills to get in and get out, right? So I absolutely think that is a possibility. And then he is desperate to save Xaden, right? He has been there the whole time and he has been by his side. And Mira, even in part of her speech against Talia, Xaden's mom, and Ferris, right, says, look at all these people. You were never going to be okay with it anyway. Look at Garrick. He's been at Xaden's side no matter what. And he is still at his side no matter what. And if I still haven't convinced you, I am going to say that bucket, that steel rusted bucket that was gifted to him, I think that was a foreshadowing of this to happen, where his bucket is empty. He has done it all. He has tried his all. It is empty. And now the rest is like, it is turned different from what the original appearance and original intent. The outside has changed. And I think that is a foreshadowing that he is going to change also. The Zihnal gifts are really interesting. So while I mentioned that, let's go into all the other ones. What do those gifts from Zihnal mean? Because I know Rebecca mentioned that there is meaning to those gifts. And it is really hard for some of these, and people have some really big theories out there. I only took a glance because I wanted to have my own perspective, and then I'll go dive deeper into them after we discuss some more and throw my stuff out there. But let's start with Mira. I've already talked about Garrick, so let's talk about Mira. And I think it's really interesting to hear the overall, not just the thing that they received, but also the description around it. So let's go to that. Take that out. Chapter 38. Awesome chapter, by the way, that just made me laugh out loud, think all these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? Fantastic chapter. Loved it. Okay, so Mira. The descriptions are important, right? It's a bottle of wine given to her by a middle-aged woman with curly brown hair. And her response is, I'm going to effing need this. I had a lot of thoughts about the wine. Is it the red? Is it blood shed? Kind of like a spiritual aspect. I do have that kind of faith, right? And so I'm like, is it a pouring out? But I also, the middle-aged woman with curly brown hair, I'm mixing that with the comment of what is your legacy? What are you called to? What did your mother pass on to you? So I kind of feel like that is symbolic of Lilith passing on the torch to her and saying, you are going to be the next general that is going to lead the army. And maybe she might have to give her blood as well. I don't know if she's going to have to sacrifice like Lilith to further the cause, but that is my initial thought. All of these gifts, I would absolutely love to hear all the insights you have because we are stronger together, right? Okay, we have Marin is the next one. And I have no clue what that might be other than two, right? And she has two brothers. And Orange has like this significance of luck, of encouragement. So maybe there is something that is coming where the boys play a part and she's able to save them. Or maybe because they are saved as part of her family, right? The only people that are saved in her family. But I feel like it's something to do with her brothers and something that is fortunate that is coming. So a good foreboding, I guess, that she is able to save them. Dane. Let's move to Dane and the big slap, right? I think it is comedic. I mean, I laughed out loud at all the commentary that was there. And I think that was just so symbolic or significant in that being a wake up call, a call to the readers to say, this is the punishment for Dane. Let's let go of our hate for Dane. He has redeemed himself. He has learned how to treat women. He has learned how to treat his friends. He is no longer to be doubted. And I am all for the Sloane connection because I'm not going to talk about that today, but I'm all for the Sloane Dane, whatever is brewing there. But I think that is just an accentuation that the penance has been paid. We'll leave it at that. We talked about Garrick. Auric. Auric is an interesting one. A fractured hand mirror that immediately cuts his thumb when the man hands it to him top first. I think this is perhaps a foreshadowing of complete transformation that needs to happen and for him to move into the Navarre leadership because they need him, right? They need him to lead in the way that is right in serving the people, in serving not just Navarrians, but Aretians and everyone around the globe. And he does not want to. He sees himself differently, but I think the mirror is like, you need to change the way you think, the way you see yourself, shatter whatever image you have of yourself. And perhaps the blood, he might have to shed blood of his own family line. I don't know if that's going to be his father, his brother. Is it going to come to that? I don't know. But the blood, I feel like it's from his own family. Xaden. We have the empty glass box, size of his foot, with pewter hinges and edges. I absolutely think that is Violet. A small, right? It's the size of its foot, is small. It's glass, so it can be easily shattered. It is fragile, at least it looks fragile. It's pretty. And it has pewter hinges and edges. Pewter is an alloy. Pewter is silver. Who is silver and who is magic? If we are talking about earlier, we'll get into this more too, so I'm getting ahead of myself, but we talked about the Arids saying, you are magic. And who did Andarna pick? Violet. And we have also heard Felix tell her, right? You have pure power. It just comes in the form of lightning because that's what you were comfortable with. But there is absolutely a thread here. She is magic. She is power. I think she is going to be able to power other people, say like Xaden, and maybe Sloane will help to be a conduit perhaps of these kinds of things, right? I don't know all the details, but I absolutely think this box is significance of Violet. And later when you see it, right, the Aretian blade is in there as well as the compass. It is because she is holding all of those things, right? All the things he holds dear, she is holding them in there and caring for him and carrying him. And I don't know how else to say it. It's Violet. And then when you move to Violet, a black compass on a dark chain, the needle doesn't point anywhere near it. It was given to her by a tall man with bronze skin and short black hair with dark eyes that study her for a moment that quickly becomes awkward. And when she lifts her chin, the man's mouth tilts into a smirk as he nods subtly, as though finding my reaction worthy, and with his eyes blatantly mocking her as she steps back. Who does that remind you of? absolutely Xaden, right? So this compass, it might look broken, but it is black. It's on a dark chain. If that is not symbolic enough of Xaden as venin, I don't know what else does. But the needle might not point anywhere right now, but I absolutely think it is going to point to love. It is point to Horm, point to Xaden. And I don't know at what point the compass is going to work. Maybe it is always her way of being able to find her way to him, or maybe when the time is right, she is able to finally figure out this is the time. I don't know how the compass is going to work, but it is absolutely a pointing to Xaden, and it will be crucial for the final whatever. Riddick, a kiss on each cheek from a man who clasps his hands and is a lanky blonde man. Now, I don't know what that is, but I think this is absolutely being kissed with luck. He is fortunate in a lot of different ways. And so I think it is just the way that they have greeted them on the island of Zihnal, Zelina, I don't know how to say it, but I think this is just alluding to that of how he is fortunate, he is luck, and he is also going to carry that with him. And maybe for the people around him too, say Violet, that he is protecting with his whole heart. We are going to get to why Riddick is number one in this book, but I'm holding that for later, okay? But yes, MVP, Riddick. And then we have Cat, a gold necklace with a thumb-sized ruby. The ruby and all the gems in here, I need to go dive deeper into that. The only thing I know is the Duchess of Moraine had rubies. There was a ruby in the hilt of one of the venin daggers, right? And so these are very interesting, but I think she is going to be on the throne somewhere. I don't think it's going to be Moraine. I don't really know all the politics there. But I think she is going to have some sort of alliance with someone, especially with Traeger sadly gone, right? Now her heart is going to be open. Is it going to be Auric? Is she going to be the Queen of Navarre? I don't know. But I think that's just she is going to step up in a bigger role, bigger power, bigger life. Drake. An orange tabby kitten that is mewling, given by a bear of a man with huge fists swinging by his sides. And he comes out with this little tabby cat, right? Broccoli broke the internet. I had no idea why people were going to be so obsessed with that cat. But I don't know what the significance is going to be. Orange is luck, right? So I don't know if it is a divine creature. And so is it going to be some sort of lucky creature that keeps bad things away? I don't know. I don't know, but I am eager to find out. And I don't know what that bear of a man alludes to or signifies. I am going to dive deeper into that. But it is going to be interesting. Rebecca has said nothing's going to happen to that cat. So we don't have to worry about Broccoli. But what is Broccoli going to do? What is Broccoli going to do? But the Drake and Mira thing too? Look out for that. Look out for that. Traeger gets an arrow through the heart, right? And I think this is very symbolic of what the quest squad has been through, and perhaps what they still will, is all these daggers to the heart of just one thing after another. And perhaps it's also an exclamation point to my earlier point that you cannot heal venin. Because Traeger was a healer, right? So they took that healer out and is saying, you cannot heal this. And perhaps it's also a trigger, see what I did there, for Kat to get even stronger and to move on and to move into a different role and see other people differently. So they're taking the healer out of the equation. Another Hugie, we're going to Violet's second signet, because we know there was the comment where the ear it said, you gave her, and Darna, you gave Violet something more precious, didn't you? And so we're like, what is it? But we know she can at least dream walk. And we know that it is going to be stronger and stronger, right? Because she is barely touching on this. She doesn't even know she can do it. But I cannot help but wonder, well, first of all, why did Rebecca say it was going to be underwhelming? If you can mind walk or dream walk or anything walk, that is pretty darn cool. We had these theories, and then she said it was going to be underwhelming when you found out, right? That is not underwhelming at all. Anyway, rant over. But I first need to talk about what Laotian said, or Leothin. Leothin said to Andarna, "You are magic. You can bend it, shape it, break it as you see fit," right? Essentially confirming that she made the right choice with Violet, but it is not the right time because Andarna isn't trained enough yet. And so I think there is this ability for these Irids to talk to all the humans, right? Yes, they do that shrill sound thing, but they were able to talk to them. So I think that is a mind walking or perhaps just being able to talk. But that Andarna's specialness, I think, was also why, regardless of location and having no magic in the ground, Taryn, Andarna, and Violet were still able to speak to each other when no one else could. It was the Andarna power that was given to Violet. And that then has to make me wonder, do Irids channel from a completely different magic than the other dragons, and it is not channeled from the earth or tied to the earth, whereas the other dragons now do? And there's all this stuff about you command the power of the sky, like all this stuff, right? And Theophany said, "You are the exception, Violet." And so there is absolutely something I need to figure out about why the Irids are so different and why they can channel magic, pure magic. You don't need humans, you don't need the earth, they can channel it anywhere. Whereas these other dragons, the normal dragons, are tied to the earth or the land or wherever they are. And is that something that came because of their bond to humans? So that was kind of a tangent. But coming back to Violet's second signet, the gift is likely not just dream walking, right? I think she is going to be able to mind walk as a whole eventually, and not just mind walk into things, but can you sway things? Can you change things? Change how people perceive or see things? It is coming in dreams now because she wasn't even aware that she was using it, right? I think she is doing this "I'll be where I need to be" thing that Andarna kept saying. And Xaden needed her in a lot of these cases, right? Where he was in pain, he was hurting, he was needing help. And so that's where she was drawn. I don't know about the Marin thing. The Marin thing, maybe it'll become more clear as to why she is the only other person that came up in her dreams, or she was able to walk into her dream. But then when she notices that she is in someone else's dream, she then became a part of it, was on the side though, became her own person, and other people could see her. So this is this very weird thing where she can now go into people's minds and change different things. And from that, you can clearly see that the sage, Berwin in this case, as has been identified, is the other person that could potentially be able to teach her, because clearly he is a walker as well. If he keeps showing up in these very vivid ways, and he was able to switch real quick when he saw her and said, "Oh, you," right? And was talking to her now, not just seeing through the eyes of Xaden. So absolutely, he is going to be the person that is going to be able to teach her and figure out, or she has to learn from. But that makes me wonder, is that Naolan turned Berwin? But then would it people recognize him? And I still haven't figured out the tie between Naolan and Brennan, but there's that weird mark conversation about how the mark on him isn't there and Dane's mark isn't there. So I need to go back and look at that, but I don't have enough time for that in this video. If you want more of that, you know where to go. Drop it in the comments. I also wonder about the original person, and I mentioned this earlier. Is it the original six? Like, these people are really, really old, right? Theophany knew a lot of stuff about a long time ago, and she has been around. And so, how far do these people go, especially if the Arians are saying the original people did not become extinct, or so it seems? And so, how long have they been venin? Is she the answer to who? Who? We don't know. So many questions still be to answered. Books 4 and 5, obviously. How did the Empyrean start? There are all these, the Irids were initially part of it, and all the dragons used to channel from the sky, from the earth. What happened? Or did they leave when the dragons started trying to be gods by bonding riders and using them for magic? Which on page 347, right, they said they fled from the horror of weaponizing magic. And page 343 through 5, this is when Andarna's telling the story, right, of how she became where she was. And they are horrified by dragons killing humans and that she picked a tail that is a weapon. They are horrified, even though she doesn't know that the storytelling is going horribly in their eyes, right? Violet is obviously observant of that, but they also say Andarna is brave, fierce, vicious, everything the Empyrean respects, but not the Irids. Because that was Riddick saying, no, but she's brave, fierce, vicious, everything the Empyrean respects. But Violet is very astute in saying, but that is not what the Irids want from her. And they say, we can't accept you because we think you're a weapon. And that was not a compliment, even though Andarna first thought it was. And how off she is about her breed, because they are bred for peace with all living things and not violence. They wanted to see if the humans had blossomed under the wardstones. So they were there when they fired up the wardstones, and they left Andarna the egg there to see if the humans would get better and not be fighting. And when they were, I guess they would come back. I'm not sure why they didn't stay, or like why they didn't wipe out the bad. I'm not really sure there. Like, why did they use their magic for good? Because they seemed the most powerful. It just got worse though, right? And then Leothan says, the fact that you think they need protection. This is to Terran when he says, I'm not going to leave because you're going to hurt them. And he says, the fact that you think they need protection from me is why my words are only for them and I will only offer once. And this is right before Andarna leaves, right? To learn about her kind. And Violet makes that choice for her. It's a sacrificial thing, sacrificial love. And you see all these different themes. And I'm going to go back to the whole love and violence thing, right? Love, the Dune and Loyal. Going back to Dune and Loyal, but there's also a shift in how Xaden talks, right? He now stops calling her violence, but calls her love. And so I don't know if that's alluding to her being part of Loyal relation, or that is just in foreshadowing. But there is something there. There is nothing that is just by circumstance here, right? But anyway, back to the Empyrean. I have to wonder, did humans go bad and turn venin first? Or was gifting magic to humans? Was the magical balance in response to try to vanquish the venin? Or what came first? What didn't? What was the offness of balance in magic? Because we know that that's when the Irids left, because they wanted no part of that world destruction that was starting to happen. Again, I don't know why they couldn't just help wipe out the bad, but if we're going back to some sort of spiritual thing, maybe it is a giving choice thing that I want you to want to be good. I want you to choose good kind of thing. I want you to choose world peace. Now we just talked about who stole the show. Obviously, Riddick. He is funny. He is also very serious and 100% Team Violet. And it is amazing to see that, because throughout, even the people that love her, right? Xaden, Rhiannon, Mira. Everybody has different responsibilities and loyalties, and they have to do something, whether it's Tyrandor or the marked ones for Xaden, or for Ree, she has the squad, right? She has to lead the squad. Mira, she also has duties with the wards and all that. And Riddick is the only one that is 100% by her side. He recognizes it. He even steps up and says, you need to put me on the quest squad, is willing to voice that and say, you need me. I need to be there for you. So props to him. And for all the different funny ways, I just got to show. I just got to show this. All the clips, appreciation of Riddick.
I'm just as good a fighter as any of you. And while you've been focused on rehab and Rhiannon is chasing first years to keep them in line, I've been the one reading every fucking book Justinia shoves at me and spending extra hours training. The skin on the orange splits. It really pisses me off when you guys act like my sense of humor somehow lessens my ability to show up for our squad. I have 4 uniforms, but only 1 fucking flight jacket, and I punch, hate, punch, sewing. Table is broken. Now what do you need? You two totally broke it, didn't you? Riddick asks on the edge of laughter. Like that armoire no one was supposed to notice getting hauled out of her room during first year? I don't know what you're saying. Riddick turns toward Atrum. The brown swordtail opens his mouth and roars louder, blowing back Riddick's dark brown hair and covering my friend in a layer of goopy saliva. Gross. Riddick slowly lifts his hands and scrapes the slime off his face. Yelling at me doesn't help. It's like shouting in a language I don't speak. Maybe this is who he could have been if his dad hadn't led a whole rebellion and fucked him over by getting executed and having him thrown into the quadrant and making him responsible for all the marked ones at the age of what, 17? Riddick muses. Sawyer, look at you! Riddick runs forward, his arms up in victory. Sleeve swings his head and snaps his teeth shut a few feet in front of Riddick. Look at you from a distance! Riddick retreats, his arms still held high. When he bumps into Marin, he turns and sweeps her into a hug.
A few scenes that broke my heart when Lynx manifested shadows. Oh. That was a slap to the face. And that was an awakening of how the shadows are going away from Xaden and transferring, and there needs to be a counterbalance. But then the fact that he walked him through it and Brett taught him, I think that is already showing that there is a potential, right, for venin and humans to live together and to teach each other and to figure out how to use magic for good and not just for destruction, just like the Arids want. And then I never thought that I would cry over Quinn, but oh man, I was walking through the library when I was reading to that and I was crying, and people probably thought I was crazy, but it was sad. It was sad. And then the whole Imogen Garrick scene, and that's going to happen at some point, but if Garrick is now venin, there's another thing, right? And Imogen is a whole other, what did Violet ask her to do? Did she actually ask her to do it? What is Imogen's backstory? What is she hiding? Because there is definitely something to her backstory that we do not know yet. We don't know where she came from. What is she hiding? And what was that second signet that she had of turning into stone? So many things that are still open out there. Final review of what I'm rating this. So originally I had said 4 stars because I was kind of like, oh, there's just a lot of romance, a lot of okay, I get it. Your abs, your chiseled jaw, it's a joke in our house now where I see my husband, I'm like, oh, your chiseled jaw, or oh, abs for days, right? That's just how we roll. There's a lot that is in your face. And my husband said, I gathered that she is a romance author, even though I've never seen or read any of her other stuff. But by the way she writes this, he obviously knew that she has a romance author background. So that was kind of this, and then there was this confusion of oh my gosh, there's so much stuff coming at you. But once I finished it and then I reread it and then I just kept thinking about it, and there was so much more to unpack, and it was so funny. It was so foreshadowing. There is so much packed in there. I'm putting it to 4.5 stars. I'm just taking off that first half because it is just in your face, physicality, smut. Anyway, you get the point. If you loved that, props to you. Everybody is different. It was just a lot for me, but I loved the world building. I loved everything else about it, and I'm still going to be thinking about it for days, and I'm probably going to add a lot more tabs in this and like notes and everything and come back for more, but that. Whew. Do not be shy. Tell me what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have tons of other theories? Do we need a monthly book club that is live so that we can interact with each other? Let's dive in even further and keep swirling, because that is what I'm going to be doing. Are you? Oh my goodness, did it wreck you as much as it did me? I am emotionally spent, and we have to wait impatiently for years to figure out the next 2 books to finish this series. Let me know I'm not alone so that we can survive together until the next book, and I'll see you in the next video.